So much. Thank you. And as we get through this, please go ahead and ask questions in the chat. If you have any questions about anything we're discussing, we'll have some monitoring on that and be able to get your questions answered. All right, so today we're going to talk about the customs editor, the back end of Filevine, and how to make customizations to the front end experience for your users. So all of that is going to take place in the customs editor. To gain access to Customs Editor, you're going to go to your main menu up at the top and then go into the Advanced Tools, and then in alphabetical order down to Customs Editor. Now, what you see here is very specific to each user's experience. So if you are not seeing access to that Customs Editor, you do want to reach out to whoever you're working with internally to gain access to that. Now, when you're in the Customs Editor, you may or may not have access to a bunch of different templates, and the templates are what we chose up in this top dropdown. Those are the different front-end templates that we see. You could have one for maybe personal injury, or maybe one for estate and probate, things like that. Different areas of law should have their own templates. So that's what we're going to access up here. And then we're going to be able to make those customizations to each template. So once you've chosen your template, we do have a couple of different tabs up here that we're going to review. The first one is the sections, and the sections are the data points that you see on the front end of the project where all the data collection is going to take place. So each of these boxes represent one of the sections that you have in your project. There is some customization that you can make to these. You can also create a new section up here as well. So when you're creating a new section, just click on that box and give it a name. You can also customize the icon for each section. That's kind of fun because then you can make that user experience just a little bit more aesthetic if you'd like. You can assign those icons to each one of the sections, whether it's custom or not, in Filevine. But give it a name, and then each section also has a specific visibility, so it can always show up on the front end. It can sometimes show up on the front end, and you can toggle it off or on based upon the section visibility chosen here. You also have the ability here in the internal notes to just note some things that you want your front end users to see about this section. And also the section type. So there are two types of sections actually here in Filevine. You have built-in sections that Filevine offers for every single template type, and custom. So if you're building a new template, for example, you may want to bring in those Filevine built-in sections like the calendar and the team and things like that. So you have access to all of those Filevine built-in sections as well. When you're choosing a custom section, you do have a couple of additional questions that you need to answer as well. So there's two options of custom sections as well. It will default to a static section. Static sections are the ones where when you click into it, you have all of your data points available to you. You don't have to click on add an item and create a card of data. If you do want to create a collection section, just click on that box there. And when you hit save, it'll make that section, it'll convert that section from static section into a collection section for you. So that's how you add a new section into Filevine. We're not going to do that right now, so I'll just exit out of there, and we're going to go look into some of our other sections that we already have created. Intake, for example, this one has a lot of options in it. So if we open up our intake section just by clicking on it, we have access to all of the data points that we see in our intake section. Some of these are marked as obsolete, meaning we can't see them any longer, but any data points or any projects that have data in that will still show up in those projects. But you can add fields and widgets here. You can also edit any of the data points or options that you currently have in the section, like this drop-down list, for example. If we wanted to add some options to our drop-down list or maybe remove options, we can do that in here. You can also drag and drop these to place them where you want them to go. And you can also alphabetize them. If you've entered a whole bunch of options and they're all just in a random order, you can just click that button and alphabetize those options there.
And just a note for the drop-down list, if you do remove an item that is in this list and you've selected that in a project on the front end, it'll leave that project blank for this particular field. So we usually recommend maybe repurposing or not repurposing, I'm sorry, indicating that you're not utilizing that as opposed to removing it. That way your historical data does retain, but some folks are okay with removing it. Just wanted to note that.
Sure. Yes. Thank you. If you are trying to remove items, then you can just click on this X, but like Jasmine says, that will basically just make that void essentially in any options that currently exists in. All right, so those are drop-down fields, but you can make changes to any of the fields in this section. Now, we want to be a little bit cautious here on this back end, specifically when we're using or when we're trying to make changes to these items up here, if you do have the ability to. Some people don't, some people do. But these field selectors right here, we don't necessarily want to touch when possible, just because those field selectors are tied to reports, they're tied to DocGens, and that could mess up a lot of things. So if you have access to change that, don't recommend it. So those are sections here. I'm going to close out of this one and we're going to talk a little bit. Actually, before I do that, apologies. I'm going to go over one more thing here. When we're in these sections, there's two different options. There's fields and there's widgets. So those are new options that you can add as data points in these projects. The fields are really just data points, data entry points, drop downs, text fields, date fields, things like that. The widgets are items that do something in your project. So if you want maybe a link to an external URL or a button to generate an email, that is options that you can choose back here in widgets. You also can insert DocGen buttons in the project, and DocGens are the letters that pull data from the project into a letter for you so that you don't have to manually keep typing that stuff out each time you need a document. So those are the two different types of fields that we can add in Filevine. Action buttons do then give you some other options as well, like I was just talking about before. The external link buttons, it could even be an internal link if you wanted it to. Drafting an email. So basically, if we have a button there, then it pulls up an email in your default email set to your computer and has all the subject and terminology and data from the project in the email already for you just by pushing this button. So that's an action button that you can include in your projects as well. And then task flows. We know there's phase-based task flows in Filevine, but there's also task flow buttons that you can place for maybe incident-specific type task flows that you need to include in your project. So those are widgets, those are not fields. So all of those are added back here in fields and widgets. All right, now I'm going to close out of this and we're going to go up and talk about some of these options off to the side here. There is the ability to export these sections. If you're trying to maybe build a new template and you want to copy some sections from one of your other templates, you can export each section out into a new template if you want to. You also have the ability with this little eyeball to preview the whole section without contingencies. So if you open up the section like I just had it opened, it's kind of hard to see how the placement looks and what all the fields look like. But if you use that little eyeball, then it will just show you what that section looks like at a glance. So you can see all of the fields as they exist and what it's going to look like on your front end for the users. You also have the ability to change the order in which these sections are shown on the front end as well, just by using these up and down arrows. Fun fact with that, if you are trying to move these around, if you position the section you're trying to move just to the top of your screen and you just start pressing down, then you don't have to keep moving your mouse to move it down. Just keep on clicking and it'll move it all the way through until you get to the end. I don't know what that's called, but just a little fun trick that we've figured out along the way how that works. I'll move that back up in a minute. Okay, so now those are our sections. That's the data entry points from our project. Now the next thing we're going to look at is vitals. Now vitals in the project are the ones that fly out off to the side of the project, really just at a glance data points from within the project that we want to see without having to click in multiple different sections. This is where we're going to come to assign those different vitals to the projects. Each template has their own set of vitals. So personal injury would have its own, estate probate would have its own, criminal would have its own, things like that. So right now we only have 4 vitals in our template, but we can add new ones. We can rename the ones that we already have here, and we can also reorganize them using these little buttons off to the side here. So if you are looking to add a new vital, it's really simple. All you have to do is click the Add Vital button, and then right here in this search bar, it's going to give you access to all of those front-end data points. So let's say, for example, we wanted maybe incident date or something. Actually, we already have that in here. Let's do statute of limitations. Just start typing the name of the field the way that you see it on the front end of the project, and it will bring up any matches that fit what you're looking for. Now for statute of limitations, that's a deadline field in Filevine. So we actually have 2 different data points that we can select for that. We have a due and a done date. So for the specific example, you probably only need the due field, but anyways, choose the data point that you want to see in your vitals. And then you also have the ability to have that displayed a little bit differently in your vitals. So if you don't want your vitals to say statute of limitations due date, and you just want it to say SOL, you can do that. And so with this display name override, just type what you'd like it to show on the front end and then save. So now we know it's statute of limitations from the front end, but it'll show as SOL in our vitals.
If you're like, my vitals don't look like this, it may be that you haven't added or turned on the expanded vitals. They are turned on in our sandbox org. So this looks just a little bit different. With the expanded vitals, you will have the option to add up to 100 options here, and then each user will be able to choose which 15. If you have the older vitals, you'll be able to add 15, and every user will be able to see those 15. But the override, title override, and everything is still the same.
Great call out, thank you. If you do have the old vitals and you are interested in upgrading to the expanded vitals, all you have to do is click on this option up here. Gives you a little warning if there's maybe an error in that transition, it'll let you know, but then your vitals will also look like this after that. Pretty simple. All right, next option here is phases. Now those are the life cycle of our case from start to finish. All of these phases can be customized. So these are all the phases that we currently have for our personal injury template, but we can add phases here, we can remove phases, and we can also rename these phases from here if we want to. You can also drag and drop and sort them like we've seen in all the other options previously to change the order in which they show in your dropdown of the project. So if you need to add a new phase to your phase list, just click on Create New Phase and then give it a name. That part is really fun. I'm trying to think of a fun name for this. We're just going to say test for now. You can also make this phase only show when a specific section is visible in a project. Some of these options that we're seeing on the back end are definitely additional products and features, not something that's offered to every Filevine customer, but just keep that in mind. If what you're seeing here is different than what you see on your back end, it could potentially just be another option through Filevine. So, go away. Not this piece right here, that should be available. The validation AI piece of it really just uses rules in the project and forces the users to make sure that certain criteria is met in the project before this phase change can complete. So let's say, for example, you don't want your clients to move from potential new client into file setup or file setup into treatment if the statute of limitations is not filled out or something like that. You can use those rules in the projects to kind of disallow that phase change and give the user an alert that says, hey, wait, something's not done yet. And then when that's complete, the phase can be changed. So that's what that is here. All right, but anyways, if we're just adding a new phase to the project here, just give it a name and save. That part's pretty simple. Of course, my save button is being covered by my Zoom controls. All right, and then it tells you when the phase is created. Now they're always going to show up at the top, so you will then need to drag and drop them wherever you'd like them. And you can also rename them. So let's say, for example, I wanted this to say test item. I can always come back in here and make changes later to that. I can also remove phases here, but I will caution that when you remove phases from here, it will also remove any tasks that are associated with that phase, which is in a completely different area of this advanced area. So just keep that in mind. If you are deleting phases, you want to go into that task flow area and make sure that those tasks are reassigned to another phase before this deletion takes place. But
Lindsay,
oh, yeah.
anything with purple stars is an AI feature that is with purchase add-on included in the AI package, right?
Say that one more time. I apologize.
No worries. Anything with purple stars is an AI feature that is a with purchase add-on included in the AI package, correct?
For the most part, yes. There are, well, I think there's one that I can think of at the moment that is an AI feature that's not paid for, that everybody has access to, and that is in the activity feed. But for the majority of those purple sparkles, the answer is yes. This one right up here at the top of the activity feed is free for every user. It will summarize your activity feed for 7 days. AI paid features allows 30. So, but the short answer is yes, for the most part, those purple sparkles are going to be a paid item.
And Lindsay, can you demonstrate the validation feature?
Let's see here. Let's go into litigation. Okay. So let's say, for example, we wanted this litigation section to only be able to be changed if, let's say, the statute of limitations is filled out. So first we would want to turn on the validation, and then in this text box, then you can really just give it a rule. I'm trying to think of how I would type this out. So let's see. Let's just say statute of limitations is complete. We'll hope that one works. All right. So then give it a validation requirement here and then save. All right. So then if I try to go back, I hope that one wasn't already in litigation. Oh, shoot. Hold on one sec. I need to go into a project that's actually in this template that we're using. Give me just one moment, please. Is your free help project just called free help?
Yeah,
There we go.
that Grizzly.
Love it. Okay. All right. And then so in the front end of the project, when you try to change, oh gosh, I should make sure that the statute of limitations maybe is not filled out before we do this so we can see it actually work. Let's take that out for a sec. All right. I'll wait for that to update for just one sec. Okay, so now when we try to change that from file setup into litigation, it's got the little pink or purple sparkles on it. And then it gives the user a little alert that says, hey, there's something that we need to check before this will actually be completed. And then hit that validation. And then the system will look to the rules and say, oh, not sure that you actually did what you were supposed to. This is the piece that we entered in that validation. So it's saying we can't change it quite yet. You don't have a statute of limitations because the rule that we put on the back end says you have to have a statute of limitations filled out. Correct it and then try again. So then we can go back, make sure that we have our date in here, save, and then try again. So now if we go back and try again to litigation, now it should allow us to go ahead and make that change because any rules that we've put on the back end are met. Of course. Oh, why would it work? That would be way too easy. I did save, didn't I? Yeah, it's in there. Okay. Maybe we need to be a little bit more clear. Hold on. Let me check it as done and try again because we may need to be more clear in our rule. Okay. I'm not sure why that's not working. Jasmine, any thoughts? Oh, that one took a minute. That one gave us a green light. Okay, so for my rule, I think maybe what I need to say is statute of limitations due field is filled out or something like that, and then it would not force that validation error, I guess. But I guess I would give it just maybe 30 seconds to a minute or so before you actually try to change it, just to let the system register that data, save it, and make sure that it's actually working appropriately. But that's how it works. All right. Let's see. Moving, I think we did everything we wanted to with these phases. But if you do want to remove one of these phases on the back end, all you have to do is open up the phase and then remove. And then that will take the phase and then any tasks that are associated with it. That alert will tell you, just so you know, everything that is attached to this phase is now going to be gone. Are you sure that's what you want? Yes or no? Then you can remove it. All right, the next item we're going to cover here is folders. So there is a set folder structure that you can assign to all projects as they're created in Filevine when using this template. So on the front end, no folders are going to show up in any of the projects. They will all have to be manually entered unless you have a set folder structure here. Now, to create a folder structure, that part's pretty simple. So right now we have 2 parent folders, and then if we open up this little arrow to the side, we have 2 subfolders. But let's say we wanted to add a trial folder and a settlements folder. So on the back end, highlight this primary folder, which is just the project. It's telling it which project we want these folders to be assigned to. Highlight that top piece here, and then come down to the folder creation menu. The first one we wanted to do was trial, so give it a name and then click the check mark, and it adds it as a folder above. And then we wanted to add our settlement folder in here and do the same thing. Now, let's say, for example, in our trial folder, we also wanted to have a deposition subfolder and a trial exhibits folder. Highlight that primary folder in order to create subfolders. So highlight the folder you want them to go into. Give your subfolder a name. And then repeat for your other subfolder. What was the other one I said? Depositions. All right. Now, the one thing you want to make sure that you do here before you exit is save. If you don't save and you exit out of here, then you'll have to come back and add those back in again. But now every project that I create from right now moving forward will have this folder structure assigned to it. These are not retroactive, so this will not apply to any projects that you have already created using the old folder structure or no folder structure. So just keep that in mind. But you can manually add those folders to any project at the project level if you'd like. You can make changes to these folders or changes to the names of the folders from here as well. Again, that's not retroactive, but if you wanted this to say medical records instead of medicals, you can highlight this folder, click on the edit pencil, and just change the name like that. Now, there are some codes that you can pull into the naming convention of these folders as well. So if you wanted the folder name to say client name correspondence, that's exactly what I was going to say, client name correspondence, you can pull a code into the naming convention of the folder so that it would say John Doe correspondence, not just correspondence. So there's a list of some little shortcut fields that you can put in the naming convention of those folders down here. And that's just how you would copy or type it and place it in the name right here. One of Filevine's newer updates is protected folders. And so some of these folders can be protected on the back end so that the front end users have to have a specific permission in order to access that folder. So this is one of the ways that you can protect those folders on the back end. If this is, let's say settlement, for example, we wanted that to be a protected folder, then we could just toggle that on. And then on the front end, the users would have to have a very specific permission in order to access this specific folder. All right, any questions on any of that stuff before I move on? All right. You also have the ability up in this top corner of your template to import and export templates. So let's say, for example, your personal injury template. Oh, it's telling me I didn't save. Good thing it did that. Let's say, for example, you wanted to take your personal injury template and copy it because the majority of your personal injury template is great and you want to use it for maybe mass tort, and you don't want to rebuild all of that stuff in a mass tort template. Then you can export your template here, re-import it in, give it a different name, and then make changes to it based upon what you need for your mass tort template. So you don't necessarily have to just build these templates out piece by piece and data point by data point. You do have the ability to export both sections and entire templates as well. Now, let's say, for example, maybe you have another firm that you work with closely and they use Filevine and you want to use a template of theirs. They can export their template and send it over to you, and you can import it and start using it as well. You can delete. I don't know that I've ever actually deleted anything though, because once you've created it and you've used it, you generally cannot delete a template from here. Now in our
Lindsay, we have a
tips,
couple
oh,
of
yeah,
questions.
sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Protected folders. How do you select who has access?
great question. All right, so in the team, I think would probably be the primary answer to that question. So that's probably where you're going to want to go. So there's two ways that you can access the team to give access to those protected folders. Before I answer that real quick though, I do want to note you can also protect sections, not just folders, you can protect sections. And so if there is a section that you wanted to protect as well, just toggle that on here. And the permissions are going to look the same to give access to those. So in the main menu and in setup, I'm going to right click and open it up in a new tab so that we don't lose any of our progress that we've had here so far. We're going to come here to member access and then in teams. So let's say in our default team, we wanted to give myself and Jasmine access to protected sections and protected folders. This is where we're going to give that access. So if I pull Jasmine up here and I toggle on her permission here in this protected sections, she can edit those sections or she can basically just access them. And that's going to be true for both sections and folders. So this is where you're going to give that permission here. And the reason that we do it at the team level is because maybe Jasmine needs the ability to do that in the default team, but maybe she doesn't in the litigation team. So as these teams are assigned appropriately to your cases, it can help you give that permission to the people that need it in your projects. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
And just to clarify, I know that there was somebody that asked about validation AI because you don't see that feature. Each package is a little bit different, but validation AI should be included. It is usually a separate request to turn it on. So if you know who your Filevine exec is or account exec, you can reach out to them. If you're working with us here at Vine Skills, just let your optimizer know and they'll reach out and get that connected for you. And then there was another question about being able to copy sections into another template. Lindsay, you mentioned like copying or doing full templates, but yes, you are able to also do individual sections as Lindsay's showing there.
Yes, you can. So, and usually when you do exports, whether it's a template or a section, it just downloads it to your computer. So that download just happens automatically. Then you can go to your other new template and then click the import or export button up at the top. And then you can either import an entire template or a section.
And Lindsay, is there a way to protect a folder from being absorbed into a Medcron's data? They upload docs for reference from another case to their current case and don't want the Medcron to include that medical record or document in the Medcron kind of summary. I'm assuming that you're referring to like you use AI. So when you're in your medical section and you attach a document, it automatically adds in a Medcron summary for you. So Lindsay, I can take it, or if you want to take it, I don't
Yes, go
want
ahead.
to.
Go ahead.
So the way that the Medcron works is your document is uploaded into a AI specific upload field. It'll have those purple sparkles, and that's a visual indicator to you that any document that you upload there will create a Medcron summary. So if you don't want a document to be added into there, you can go in and just create a general upload field. So you come into Customs Editor, you'd go to your sections, you'd scroll to that medicals section. And then within that medical section, you would use the add field or widget. It's going to be a field. We usually recommend using the multi-file attachment list. That way you can add as many documents as you need, and you can click that. You do have the ability to still auto move it to a folder. So maybe you've created like current medical records and or referenced medical records or medical records from another case as a folder that you have here. So you can map it to that specific folder, auto tag it, but anything that you upload here won't map into any of the AI related items. You will still have the ability to run AI prompts on that document, but again, it's not going to funnel directly into that Medcron summary because this attachment field doesn't have the like AI setup indicated down here.
Sorry. I
No
scrolled too
worries.
quick.
So hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, this is essentially how the system knows this needs to be added to the Medcron through this data mapping piece there. That's all the questions we have so far. We'll see if any more pop
Fantastic.
up.
All right. All right. So one of the last things I wanted to cover is the settings wheel. So this is something that I kind of covered a little bit in the tip for today. But this is really your settings on the template. So this is the name of your template. You can change that if you need to. And then this is the abbreviation that your users see for the template on the front end of the project. And that's just really an easy way to determine or decipher, template by template. You can make this visible to the org, which means that if this box is checked, your users can use this template to create new projects in Filevine. So when you're in the front end of your project and you are trying to create a new project, when that visible to org is checked, then that is an option here for you to use. Add an option here. So that's what that little check mark does here. Now also you can favorite this as well. And that piece, I'm gonna go ahead and save that as an update for now. Maybe, there we go. When you're on the back end, would give it a little star so that you know when you're scrolling through, of course, like we have quite a few of them, the starred ones are going to stay up top. So it's favorited and you don't have to scroll and try to locate the ones that you're trying to find. So that favorite of this org will just give it that little star and kind of move it to the top of your list there.
And just a note for the visible to this org, if you deselect that, not only is it not available for you to create new projects, but when you do that drop down list that Lindsay just showed, it's not going to show up in that initial list. You will have to check include hidden project types, and then it will show up. It'll kind of like be gray instead of black in the name. I don't even know if we have any in this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
we have a
do.
couple. So those are light gray, and they also indicate that they're hidden on there. So you can still go in, you can change the visibility and things like that if you need to down the line, or take sections from it to move to other places. But that's that visibility there. So keep that in mind.
Yes, great. Good call out. Thank you. These internal notes are really just what we're seeing at the top when we come into this section so that your users know when they can and cannot use this template for projects. And then this default contact type is kind of what I was talking about in the free help tip that we posted. This is going to be defaulted to client, but any of the contact labels that you have created in your org can be the primary contact type of this specific template. So let's say, for example, you have a family law case and you wanted the primary default contact type for the client of your case to be petitioner or something like that, then as long as you have petitioner as an option in your labels, client labels dropdown, then you can choose that as an option here. We're going to pretend for now that partner says petitioner. And then update. And then whenever you go to create a new project using this template, it will automatically assign that primary client label right here to this person as petitioner and not client. So let me go into where to actually add those if you don't have one automatically or already saved to your org. In the contact setup is where you're going to change those labels and add those labels. I know that's not really what we're talking about today, but that's where we're going to go. And then in the types and labels right here up at the top is where you can add and change those. So I could add petitioner here if I wanted to as an option. And then once that's saved, then you can go back to your customs editor and then add that as an option for your, oh, where is it? I've lost it. Ah, there we go. It's because I marked it as favorite. And then we can come back here and use our default contact type as petitioner and update. So now whenever I try to make a project using this free help template, it will always make that main client contact of the project petitioner. Any other questions on any of that so far? Or any other clarification that you want on any other areas of maybe the sections or data points or something like that?
I don't see any. While we wait, just a few kind of like things. I guess Lindsay and I used to work at Filevine when they had implementations in-house, and both of us actually started as design coordinators. So we were in customs editor all the time, making edits, updates, all of that good stuff. So I think through kind of that experience and our experience implementing clients as well, there's a few things that we've learned about customs editor that might be helpful to you all. In customs editor, within a given section, you're not able to have two fields named the same thing. You're also not able to make certain adjustments. So Lindsay mentioned the ability for you to go in and edit a already selected item, right? You can update the name of it. You can update the drop-down list. You're not able to update the actual type of field or widget. There are some exceptions that will allow you to kind of um, alter from a single text line to a multiple text line or a multiple text line large. So you can navigate through some of those, but you can see I can't change this into a drop-down list, a multi-select, a person, anything like that. So you do want to be, or double check, I guess, is better. Double check kind of what type of data you're looking to track. When you can be specific, you want to be specific. So text fields are great, but in certain situations, a drop-down list or, currency field are better options. It's going to give you a little bit more reliable data because it narrows down what folks are able to choose or put into those fields. So just keep that in mind as you're kind of coming in to select your field types. I did mention that the multiple file attachment is one that we recommend over the single file attachment. And that's part of the reason why is because, again, once you create a field type, you can't make any changes. And that singular file attachment is limiting. It's a little limiting. So just keep all of that in mind. And then your widgets, there are some, I guess, ones that maybe are unassuming, like instructions. That doesn't really give you a full picture of what it can do. There are two different ways that we utilize instruction fields. The first is for spacers, so that visually on the front end, your columns align a little bit nicer, even if you only maybe have two things in there. Or, depending on how you've arranged it, you can also add spacing between rows so that you have a little bit more space and everything isn't as scrunched. You can also use this to actually put text in a project. So we utilize this to help guide folks and say, hey, as a reminder, when you put data into here, make sure that this is what it looks like, or make sure that this is what you're adding in. You can add emojis. You can use some of the formatting instructions that Filevine has, like bold, italicize, purple, um, to add in here as well. And that will all be visible in the actual project. Um, so those are just a few kind of other things that I've seen, Lindsay. I don't know if you have any, and we do have a question. So
Oh, okay. I think that
will you
was
demonstrate the mapping a tab to a folder?
demonstrate mapping a tab to for AI.
Um,
Oh, for the uploads.
I would assume the uploads, but
Okay. We're going to go with
if it's
uploads for
not the
now.
uploads, let us know. Yeah.
Let us know. Okay, so in order to map the documents that are uploaded or generated on the front end of a project into a specific folder of Filevine, the folder does have to exist in that folder structure that we had built out up here in order for this to work. And so in any of those doc gen or doc upload buttons, open the field up in the customs editor. And then in this little drop down piece right here, if you select that, that will show you all of the folders that you have built out in the base folder structure of the project. And then you can just choose whichever folder you want any document that's generated in this field to save to this folder in the project. So you just select it from here and then update. And then you'll know that it is connected because when you open it back up, it will tell you the folder that it is currently going into. If you've chosen the wrong one, you can still make changes to it if you want to, and then just update from there. And now, so every single document that is generated from this specific button will automatically save into that folder of the project. Was
If
that
you've
the question?
chosen,
Oh, sorry.
they haven't said otherwise, so we'll wait to
Okay.
see. No, I was just going to say if you've used tags in there as well, those tags will also populate with that document. So if you're using a very general upload field, like you may have in medical, you might have just a general medical correspondence. You obviously want your auto tags to be general and the folder that it goes to be general. If you have more specified, you can then get into maybe subfolders or some more narrowed down tags.
Sure,
And this
sure.
again is the same for the file attachments. One other note here, if you update your folder structure and you remove this medical records and bills, it will not remove the mapping on these fields. So you would have to come in and manually update that mapping. If not, it will create this folder anytime a document is uploaded, even if you don't have it in your natural um, folder, again, if you've removed it. So keep that in mind that some of these you may need to go back and update if that's the case.
Yes, great call out. Thank you.
Yeah. And then in advanced DocGen, is there a way to organize the DocGens as right now it's just one big list and not sortable, like in the DocGen setup?
Oh, do we have any in here?
The free help one has at least one. Thinking the
Okay,
intake.
there we
Oh, there
go.
we go.
Fantastic. Okay, so were you asking if these can be organized in a specific way? Because
I
there really
think so.
is not a way to make them sorted in a specific manner. I would say if you want them to show up uh, in one order over alphabetized, I would just rename it to say 01, 02, 03, whatever, because they will automatically alphabetize any of the documents that you have uploaded to this button. So using numbers is a good way to kind of get around that so that they show up in the way that you want them to.
Or again, if you're using very general DocGen widgets and you're just kind of dumping all of your insurance correspondence or medical correspondence into one, which is creating a long list, creating separate DocGen widgets for that will truncate that list a little bit. It'll require that extra click of selecting which template or which DocGen widget, but it might shorten your list that way as well.
Sure.
Perfect. Lindsay, any other tips and tricks? And I know you've worked in customs editor quite a bit. Um,
Oh gosh, you put me on the spot. I feel like I've already thrown all my tips into
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to
the
make sure. I know I cut you off in asking the question that came up, so you're totally good there.
That's okay. That's okay. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
One thing I will say that I always like to say, and I feel like I say it all the time on free help, um, if you have suggestions, right? You're like, I wish that customs editor let me visualize the section on the back end and then just click and drag like it does for contact setup. Use that little question mark icon there and share your feedback. Filevine does look at this feedback to determine kind of what new releases that they're going to work on, which is how a lot of the newer features that you all are seeing got added into the system. So feel free to come in. You can kind of see folks have already said some stuff about customs editor. You can also say, yes, I want this, or you can kind of create your own. And again, you'll want to give that thumbs up. You'll get updates on these items as they release them. And they'll say, hey, there's been an update to this item that you've said that you want access to. You can also open the portal and see all of the things that folks have suggested and go in and say, I want this. If there is something that you create, I recommend sharing it with your office to say, hey, upvote this as well so that they know multiple people kind of want this product or this release. And then in the, I guess, vein of moving items around in customs editor, just for those of you that maybe don't know, as you're kind of looking, there are some numbers there on the right-hand side. That first number is going to be the row that that item is in, and the second will be the column. Filevine automatically starts at 0. As long as the next number is higher, it will show up right next to it. We usually recommend at most 3 things. Sometimes you can get away with 4 things on a row, but any more than that, and it really starts to jumble up. And then also depending on the type of field, will kind of determine how many you should have on a line, because deadline with reminder fields, 2 is probably the most that you should ever have for those, because again, it'll start to get really small and you won't be able to actually see the data that you've put into those unless you have like a super big screen. Um, so
Sure.
that's just a recommendation there. And then if you wanted to add in an item in between a row, or if you're like, there's already 3 things on a row and I want to I want to add this in, but I want the last one to go to the next line, you're going to have to do some manual updating, because this little arrow here just moves the entire row down. Even if you were to click the second item or the third or fourth item in that row, again, depending. So like if we were like, oh, I just want to move just this single one down, clicking that arrow is going to move everything on row 2 down. So just keep that in mind. You will have to go in and manually make some updates. You'll want to make some space so that you have space on line 3 to kind of do some of those things. So again, keep that in mind. Yeah, exactly.
This is where you make those changes if you did. So I moved everything down, and it doesn't just move this row, it moves literally everything below it down too. So from 5 on, everything has been now moved down a notch. So if I wanted to move this back up to 4 and then add some additional data points in there, I could do that here. Or if I just wanted to change this in a different column of the row, then I could do that here. On that same level, one of my tips that I generally use when I'm building templates is I don't go from 3.0 to 3.1 to 3.2. When I'm building, I go from 3.0 to 3.2 to 3.4 to 3.6. You know, I leave space in between because Filevine doesn't recognize those spaces. It sees them all as the same. So you could go from 3.0 to 3.23 and it would still look the same on the front end. And so I like to leave myself space when I'm building these out so that I don't have to make these manual changes. That way it leaves just a little bit of space here and there. You may still end up having to make those changes, but me personally, when I am building out templates, I like to leave a little bit of space in between them so that I don't have to move them around.
Awesome tip.
I guess one more tip, since we were talking about those advanced properties, is how we can create contingencies on each of those data points. So you don't have to have every single data point showing 100% of the time. So if you wanted to create a contingency, let's say we only wanted to see this specific field if let's say there is uh, government claim required is marked as yes, then we can create that contingency using previous data points in the project. So when you change that contingency from always to something else, then it does give you some different contingencies that you can place on those data points. So we can use show this data point when this previous data point either equals, not equals, contains, or not contains. Just be careful when you're using equals because it does have to very much has to be exactly the same. It is very case sensitive. So if there is a capitalization in that data point, then you have to do that capitalization. So a lot of times we use contains, and because the previous question was really just yes or no, we don't have any other options. So that works here. And then another tip that we personally use we did at Filevine, but we also use at Vine Skills now, is if we do place contingencies on data points, we always type that contingency here in the notes. And that's really because when you're on the front end adding points, I'm not going to type the whole thing right now. You don't know that. You can't see that there is a contingency placed on this data point unless you open it. And so we use that notes field to just tell all of the backend users when you're back here that there is a contingency placed on this field. And so I know when I'm on the back end when this field is going to show. So thank you for kind of guiding us there, Jasmine. I think that
Yeah.
needed to be said as well.
Yeah, of course. And I think on that same vein, when you have like drop down list, we have that in our personal injury template, right? There are certain instances where you need a field to show when multiple things are selected, right? So if I have a dog bite case or a personal injury case or a a MVA case or a premise case, I need to know where the location of that was. And so we give something in common to those because they don't normally have anything in common. So that's when you'll see those special characters like asterisks or apostrophes or things like that added in. So that way, I think it's in the intake section,
Oh, is it? Okay.
um, just above.
Oh, I
Oh,
moved it all the way to the bottom. Of
I was like, what happened? It's always at the top.
course I
Um,
did. Oh,
so
goodness.
you'll see in our templates or even here when it contains the asterisk is when this will show so that it can show for a variety of um, drop down options. And then if you notice just above that show when or visibility, there were three options: locked, obsolete, and oh, I forget the other one. I
What
think
is
you have
the
to go
other
to an
one?
actual
Locked?
field, not a widget. Locked, obsolete, and required.
Required.
So required will make sure that you have to have data in there before the section can be saved. You do want to be cautious with requiring multiple fields because folks may put in dummy data so that they can save the section if they don't normally have that info and then forget. Locked fields make it so that only admins are able to edit that field. The little question marks just behind them will give you an overview. So if you're like, I forgot what she said about these, there is a little, hey, here's a reminder on what this is. And then obsolete fields, Lindsay mentioned at the very beginning, right? They no longer show in project moving forward, but will retain the data that you have on past projects. On the back end, you'll see a line through it. And when you go to run reports, you're still able to pick up on obsolete fields. Filevine does its best at not letting you delete items, especially that have data in it. That way, you're not deleting historical items that you need. And so obsolete is a good kind of workaround for that. Right. No other questions have come in, Lindsay. You always give a wealth of knowledge. So I want to thank you so much for sharing that here with us today. For those of you, again, that are like, we need help with customs editor. I learned a lot, but I need some assistance or I need some additional guidance and consulting or just anything Filevine related. Feel free to reach out to us. Our emails are just our first name at vineskills.com. We'd be happy to kind of chat with what you're looking for and then get you connected with an optimizer. Feel free to peruse our website. I put those links in the chat. So feel free to go through, and we have tons of other videos our staff does our best to create videos outside of these free help sessions that help folks, especially as Filevine releases new features. So feel free to go on there, learn a little bit more about what we offer. And again, those helpful videos, we also post them on YouTube. So there's a couple places that you can get this helpful info. And again, this recording should be up by the end of the week. Hopefully we see you all in a future free help session. And thanks so much for joining us today. And thanks again, Lindsay.
Thank you. Take
All
care,
right, have a
everybody.
good one. Bye.